Hi, Antro AI Tribe. I'm Val. This is Anthropology of AI. I'm super excited today. I have a very unique guest. The reason I'm super excited to connect and talk to Stacie is because your career is essentially a story of adaptation and a constant search for impact. And ultimately now you're at the forefront of creating synthetic realities with generative AI. Welcome, Stacie.
Thank you, Val, for that lovely introduction. You make me sound so much more accomplished than I at times feel that I am, but I really appreciate that. And I think you accurately got to the heart of who I am as a human trying to make a difference in this one life that she has on this planet. And with AI completely upending and revolutionizing how we work, how we can start to perceive our impact, how to make impact. There's a lot happening, but you nailed it when you said, first and foremost, I am a storyteller. Back in my days when I was an actress to being a journalist, I still carry a pen with me everywhere I go, trying to tell the stories to better connect people. And the reason I made probably the biggest pivot in my career to tech when I went to work at Google, when I left Google to start my own AI company, to joining different AI startups, was then adding this superpower of technology to amplify the work that I was doing as a storyteller. And I love what you're doing with Anthropology of AI, because why else use AI or explore the incredible powers it has other than to make us all even more human? So really excited to be here today and chat about how I think AI is actually making us more human, which may sound counterintuitive, but it's a firm belief that I have.
It's a super fascinating choice. So the first theme I would love to explore with you, Stacie, is the why. So the why behind the non-linear path. Really just focusing on what are the drivers, what motivates you, and ultimately what are the skills that connect your this different career journeys. So my first question is, your career is so fascinating. As I mentioned, you're an Emmy-nominated actor. You are an award-winning journalist. You were a partnerships lead at Google, and now you are a two-time Gen AI founder. What is the fundamental mission or story that connects these chapters for you?
Yeah. Oh gosh, Val, when you repeat it back, I go, sometimes I sound like a dilettante. But the core of what I do is because technology is inherently always improving and progressing. So I actually view shifting or jumping to new opportunities as natural. If you're not you, the proverbial you, then I don't believe you're necessarily capturing all the opportunity with various technologies. So that's why I've moved from being an actress to storytelling. And I used to work in newspapers as technology as a vehicle for disseminating information. At that time was the most superior technology, packaging all this information into one daily piece of content that could be delivered to your doorstep. That was technology. Now, when the internet came about, or it became more popular to start consuming your information on digital websites, I said, this company, Google, is doing this really well and aggregating all the information from disparate news and websites and then sending traffic back to these websites. That to me was the most powerful or impactful technology at the time. And then for various reasons, what I saw on the content creation side, what Gen AI could do, I decided to leave Google, build a content creation platform for publishers to then create different types of content, the original text to video or multimodal, where you could convert your text article into Instagram reel or a TikTok video. What I was seeing was always new technological opportunities to build solutions for people, for storytellers, for companies to better and more effectively disseminate their message, the power of their word, their information to their audiences. And who knows what the next chapter will hold for me. I'm sure not that I'm trying to intentionally shift, but always keeping an eye out on what is exciting. And that's the power of human ingenuity, is that things will get better. Things will progress. There will be new technologies. I personally believe for the better.
So what drives you essentially is not the technology itself, but what it represents and what it means for humans.
Yeah, technology is progress. It's the opposite of stasis. And I've been so fortunate to be around and have colleagues who share that similar ethos. I think people were, perhaps it is a Silicon Valley thing, but in its cliche, maybe naive. I went to Stanford. So it started very, very early where we all go and we truly believe we're going to change the world, or we have the capacity to change the world. Maybe hubris, but starting with that core belief, you believe that there's something, you're always capable of doing more. And you also have to recognize when that you might be pushing yourself too hard, but that all of us have this inherent ability to push the boundaries, change the status quo for the better, and keep building technology. And it doesn't have to be in the technological space. If you're an artist, you can push the boundaries of your art or your craft to delight and entertain people. I believe that is also a very technologically progressive mindset as well. But truly believing that all of us have an opportunity, an ability to create impact, and to not tap into that gift or that ability seems a little bit of a wasted opportunity. So that's just what drives me. I'm not saying everyone needs to have that ethos or passion, but that's really what gets me up out of bed every single day.
Yeah, got it. So really mindset over solution. And that's where the passion is coming from, right? So that's really inspiring, Stacie. Can you tell me a little bit more about when you were a journalist and you essentially you were saying that you ground your identity into being a capital J journalist, which I think is really curious. How did the core journalistic skills such as, gathering resources, verifying information, how does all of that skill set prepare you for the ambiguity of building an AI startup from scratch?
Yeah, the capital J journalist, I'm sure all of my fellow journalism classmates would either roll their eyes or laugh, or maybe a combination of both. When I'd like to believe that all journalists have a North Star, and that really is striving towards truthful information. That, yes, there might be slightly different perspectives, but the truth is more or less agreed upon. And truth is really about a society, a functioning society, ideally harmonious. But when you have that same mission as a journalist, you can disagree on how to tell the story, the best presentation of it, maybe which sources you select in your story, but we can all align on the truth. And so already you have this agreed upon set of values that I just trust. I trust journalists. I see, if you've been a journalist or a reporter or worked in media, we all have the same values. And so when starting a company, that is incredibly important. You can hire really good people, but if they don't have the same values, it's never going to work. You can have the best product in the world, but if you're not aligned on values, eventually things will crumble and shift. So when we started our company, we created our 10 commandments to live by. And it sounds so cheesy, but it's such a worthwhile thought exercise because our product shifted many times. We were doing multimodal AI, and we did text to web stories, then we did text to video. We thought about all these different things. I guarantee that that's going to shift, but what never shifted was our values. And being able to communicate that is the ultimate storytelling. Because so much of the early days of a startup is people ultimately will want to work with you, partner with you, buy from you because of who you are. And if that's not clear, if that message is not airtight, your company's never going to.
Because of who you are and your mission and your values and sort of the why behind it all.
Exactly.
Super interesting. So looking back at, you spent 8 years at Google. So
100 months, 8.5 years.
you used to work on this massive scale platforms like search and news. Like, what was the push, or maybe an observation or realization that made you decide to leave that scale and security and to build something entirely new in Gen AI space?
Yeah, so even my journey at Google, like you said, I tracked from news to search, then different regions. It was always about progressing forward, bettering myself too. I think it's also an incredibly laudable, if not reasonable, goal to work at companies that challenge you. I want to be a better professional. I want to keep learning, and Google gave me that opportunity. I have nothing but wonderful things to say about that company. I had the time of my life working there. For me, it was time to leave because I saw an opportunity to build content in a way that at the time, very publicly, Google said we are not a content creation company. And I missed that piece. I wanted to build technology that helped other publishers and brands create content in a more efficient, targeted way so they could build, whether it was web stories or Instagram reels or short form video, in an effective way with lots of A/B testing in different languages, different formats. So my curiosity to build and of course start my own thing, um, you just couldn't do that at Google. You work for a big company. So not that startups are for everyone, but it was the biggest learning of my life. I don't think I will ever be in a more uncomfortable position than that. Every day is a hustle with zero roadmap. It's overwhelming, and you really have to dig deep and be disciplined. There's If you want to do your own OKR planning, that's on you to set up the process. Hiring, there's no HR manager to help you field candidates. Everything you do is 10 times harder, but I think 10 times more worthwhile because you've brought it from its infancy to early nascent stages to actually launching something. And I don't have any children, but I imagine you feel that same sort of pride and sense of accomplishment in bringing this new thing to life. And the best part, not just launching for the sake of launching, is when customers, clients are using what you've built and they are seeing the value. And that's the ultimate gratification. And why I choose technologies, I guess I'm very comfortable in charting new territories, navigating new waters, to use all these overly cliche phrases, when there is a new technology. I love trying things, testing these things out. So I've recognized that as one of the, perhaps it's not a skill, but one of my very deeply rooted characteristics. And so if I can help chart that territory, screw up, fail, make errors, and then people can learn from that, and I can test technology first, then build appropriate technology for industries like media, where maybe not the most, they're not the fastest to adoption. Their media folks are squarely in the middle. Like, I have a healthy dose of skepticism, but also avid curiosity to explore new technologies. If I can help first navigate that, build products, build tools that will help storytellers, media folks, journalists enhance their impact, that's how I see myself fitting into this very big, complex ecosystem.
Yeah, so you can build that bridge essentially, because you can exist in that ambiguity. You're that sort of naturally curious about the technology and the applications, and you're like ready to try it. And then you also know that space where the media and perhaps the content creation space where you can apply that too, because you were part of that space, right? Like, you know what the needs are, you know what the objections are, challenges and opportunities, and so that makes you the perfect bridge to to connect the
I hope
dots
so.
for these different worlds.
Definitely. And Val, I always say, I try to build products that I wish I had had when I was a journalist, because there's just a lot of rote, tedious tasks that we would have to do, even duplication of old articles to freshen up evergreen content, or combing through data sets so I could look up all the zip codes and how different populations in various zip codes were spending their money. All these little things and tools that would have been so useful as a reporter. That's the kind of product or platform or company that I wanted to build. And I'm okay with the one coding over the weekend, or vibe coding, I should say, testing things out and probably cursing at my computer too many times, but figuring out, ironing out the kinks so that it's in a better state, at least when friends and family or colleagues want to try the tool.
Yeah, which brings me to my next question. So you've evangelized how AI gives creators new superpowers. So how do you see Gen AI video, for instance, changing the definition of creativity and expertise? Like, do you feel there is this power to democratize storytelling? You know, are there any risks attached to that in your view?
Definitely. That's probably the question that keeps me up at night. I think AI in Gen AI in content generation I think about it in two ways. On the actual accessibility to creators themselves. There's no doubt that now anyone who can string together a sentence can generate a video. That's what Hyper was building, a text to video, text to image technology. It's incredible. Now, everyone with access to stable internet connection can generate videos. So I think inherently that's a good thing when people have access to technology. With that said, when the barriers to entry are lowered and everyone can do it, I believe the quality bar has to then be raised, because the negative downside, the worst case scenario, you just get now all this AI slop because everyone's just creating and you're stressing servers and eating up all this GPU compute for what? So the why becomes that much more important. Why are we creating this? What actually is the story, the narrative, the message we're trying to tell? What are we trying to achieve? For brands, for marketers, very obvious, they're trying to create content to sell. That's great. But for other creators, I think the why becomes even bigger, and you have to question. And that's not a bad thing. It's just a very different creation thought process that now, because it's easier than ever to create, I think you actually have to be more intentional and deliberate when you're creating a video. How is it going to be different from everything else out there? Who is your audience? Who are you trying to educate or entertain? All of that needs to go into the thought process, because you got to stand out from the noise, because there's now certainly a lot of it as a result of AI.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely the case. This takes me really to the next theme of our conversation. How do you tackle that as a founder and as a leader, ensuring that people are successful in this new space? You know, your products are successful. So my first question is around skill building. So your career is a masterclass in pivoting and skills acquisition. And for people working in creative or media industries today, what are the most critical human skills or soft skills that they should be cultivating to thrive with all this new technology?
Well, I'm not sure if curiosity is a skill, but it is a mindset, as you mentioned, because what I like is now it's almost an even playing field, because no one is really that much of an expert in AI for the creative side. Even if you got started in this field 5 years ago, like I did, that's a baby, or that's a toddler. And things are moving so fast that you could be out of the game. And if you decide you want to start dipping your toe in AI, you could catch up very quickly, because that's how fast the advancements are accelerating. So I think it really just starts with a willingness to try. It almost feels like, we talk about the hamster wheel, or even just stepping on the wheel is the first step. Things like vibe coding, it's just trying it. This weekend I was trying to code my own travel app, and I broke it so many times. But that muscle memory, that just the sheer act of doing and trying, it strengthens my tenacity, it strengthens my resilience to keep trying and identify opportunities. So if I I still try to mentor young or recent college grads. It's just optimize for learning and trying. You're going to mess up. Ideally not on a big project that your manager has assigned you, but on the low risk opportunities. And so it's an ability, a willingness to keep pursuing and trying new things, and especially in go-to-market. That's what, if you're trying to pursue that sort of role or that career, that's what people are hiring you to do, is to be the first, to pioneer, be comfortable with exploring and finding untapped new opportunities. So for folks in that go-to-market space, it is the willingness to lead in the dark, navigate that ambiguity, trip a lot of times, but eventually build out then something that is scalable.
That's wonderful. And you scaled Hyper to millions of users at an incredible speed. From a human perspective, what is the secret of that successful go-to-market strategy? So you mentioned some of the skills, or a mindset rather, as curiosity and like willingness to get out there and just try things. Would you say that, how important is the tech itself versus the community you build versus the business problem that you try to tackle when it comes to the successful GTM for an AI product?
Val, that is the billion-dollar question. And I've obviously had a great team. I cannot take full credit for it. There were it was a confluence of factors, I would say. Gen AI, these LLMs where you could create video from just a prompt, that was capturing the zeitgeist. So a lot of it was timing in, so many people enamored with this technology, wanting to try it, at least the AI curious. Everyone could type in the prompt, man eating noodles, dog running through the field. I saw so many of these videos, too many to count. And so recognizing trends and truly human trends, tapping into that inquisitiveness where everyone wanted to test this out, and then ensuring that the technology, that's where you have to have an outstanding product and technology and engineering team to deliver. So everyone can try your product, but we would look at our engagement rates, what was our churn, what was our DAU, WOW, MAU from daily, weekly, monthly active users, how many videos were they generating? All of that becomes a very scientific approach in how you retain your user base, then convert them to paying customers. I think looking at it from a funnel conversion is almost too linear. There were so many ways we had to engage our user base. You talked about community, but a very active Discord community. We would do Reddit style AMAs because this technology was so new, fascinating, exciting, and we had to sustain all that at the same time of making sure we were a revenue generating business. Pricing was a constant debate. How do you price this new technology? Our growth largely started off as B2C. If and when do we convert or start focusing most of our energy on B2B, on enterprises where we could actually have custom packages? So many questions that we asked as a team, we asked ourselves, and there was no set playbook for this kind of thing. You just keep grinding out, you rapidly test, you experiment, you have to be able to pivot quickly, because no one will tell you when you're doing a good job, or ratings on your performance reviews. Like, that's just not what you're optimizing for these days. It's really, how do you build an incredible product that people want, that's very sticky, and then ultimately that we hope they pay for.
Yeah, and so it's really looking at the data around trends and how are people adapting the technology, how are they using it, with a lot of nuance, right? Not just like a specific set of KPIs, but really just looking at everything, trying to figure it out based on the bulk of that data. And there is no like playbook, there is no sort of like a linear development within that. It's like literally like almost like real-time data. So you're looking at it and tracking it and staying on top of that, because to your point, things change so rapidly, and you really have to be attuned and I guess also curious about your users and what what are they doing with your product every day?
And you have to go in with a lot of humility too, like no preconceived notions about who your ICP is or ideal customer profile. You can do all the calculations of your total addressable market and say, oh, we should capture this because the Fortune 100 companies are spending this much on brand marketing. And if we just capture 5% of those companies, we'll have this much revenue. No. It's, okay, I have one thesis of who our ICP should be. It's other video editing companies. Then I create my pipeline around there, look who the whales are, go after those biggest customers and see then if I can create case studies, build a marketing function around that. And some verticals that worked, other verticals it didn't. Okay, move on. I'm not precious about being wrong or having failed at, or not failed, but not seeing traction in that particular industry or vertical. And you quickly pivot.
So what you're saying is not, don't do research, like don't do market research, don't look at your addressable. What you're saying is that what it tells you may not be accurate, and you gotta test it out. But it doesn't mean that you don't do your homework, because you have arrived there by researching all of that, and then you got to that conclusion that, hey, for that industry it might work, for this industry it doesn't.
And one thing I've learned the past few years, having done a couple startups now, really is to just take no for an answer and move on, or at least infer the no. Because I think all of us, high performing individuals, especially Google employees, for example, we are high achievers. We think that if we put in the effort, we can get the job done. It's just a matter of persistence. And in sales, it's so much about timing. And it's not you. That customer just isn't ready, or they're not in the market for that. That's okay. Move on quickly. But in the early days, I used to think if I just crafted the right messaging, or if I just timed my messages spaced out enough, and if I were funny enough or likable enough, they would buy from me. Absolutely not. Move on quickly. An advisor told me, Stacie, the second favorite word of any salesperson after yes is no. No, so you can just let go and move on, and you can't take it personally. So I have been told no so many times, or tried to get to know very quickly so many times, that it's almost liberating. And then you can just focus on something else. And as long as you have really supportive founders and team members, that it's not that you failed, because I used to be so scared of not being able to close or win that deal. It's, oh, this just wasn't the right fit. Okay, maybe in a couple quarters, fine, but if not, that's okay. Move on. I still work on it every day. I think I can just work hard enough to get the customer to buy, but oftentimes that's not the case.
It's really difficult to find a balance between, like, okay, do I push just a little bit harder? If it's just like a little bit more information, then you get to the place you want to be. But sometimes, and often actually it would be beneficial to realize, okay, this is not the configuration for the yes. So let's just move on and focus our time and energy on things that would be a yes. Because there's also a lot of nuance that we don't know. We really don't know fully what's going on the other side.
100%. And that's why sales cycles are so unpredictable, because I've had customers who I had initially pitched to or reached out to come back 6 months later when they finally are ready for your solution. So a lot of it is being disciplined in the operations of any sales motion. Go to market is messy. It's not super clean. But there are tools out there that can help you have a better tracking system. And ops is something that I've learned that I have to do. It's not my passion, but applying that rigor to any sales and marketing motion is absolutely critical to success. And it's still something I'm improving on, hopefully every day, but it takes a lot of, at least for my brain, a lot of effort and practice.
Tracking the signals that will allow you to get to that clarity sooner. Yeah, that's the holy grail. I feel like people have this innate aversion to being tracked on anything, and so that's kind of like part of the challenge. I think it's fair, like, right? And sometimes it is like an overhead or like an extra activity that you don't want to do, but ultimately it's about fact finding and data.
And that's one thing, or one trait as a journalist, I think was a benefit, but also could work against us, is a lot of times when you chased a story, a lot of it was gut or intuition. And now it's an absolute gift. The amounts, the massive treasure trove of data that every company either has as their own first party data or third party companies or vendors that can provide more insights. The days when I was a journalist, we would track clicks, impressions, and today that feels now like such rudimentary metrics. There's so much more sophisticated data out there that can help you drive decisions. The profiles that we build around each user or reader or audience member, they're so much more complex. And there's all these events that you can measure that are not just clicks and impressions, but how far people have gone along to the page once they're registered and when they have an account and they're signed in. Especially important now that we're moving towards a cookieless world. All the things that we can track about their behavior, and hopefully this doesn't sound like a creepy way, but all these events that you can track of what a user does can help you create a much better user journey or customer journey for them. So not harnessing the richness of data is just doing a huge disservice to your customer base or your user base.
I think we talked about the why, and the why is super important. I'm not tracking for the sake of tracking, because it does sound creepy, like, in fairness. It always does. But then that's where the how comes in. It's like, okay, are we doing it responsibly? Actually, they can be incredibly useful and relevant for people who are using these products or services, or who are consuming that content. Those are the critical user journeys, right? Like, as a user would want an intelligent interaction. I actually have a theory about what intuition is. Like, people is like, listen to your gut. Like, I used to say, like, especially when I was younger, I was like, I don't know, like, how to do that. Like, is my gut like actually intelligent, or is it just like my reptile brain and sort of like protect myself thinking? But I actually realize now, I'm older and wiser, hopefully, that it's your experience and all this data that you've been exposed to, and all of that intelligence that you gathered, and you now are able to make connections like in a split second without even consciously thinking about it. I think that's like the intuition. That's
Absolutely.
what helps you, okay, I know right away that this is it, or it's not it. But it's not because it's some kind of magic, but it's really because you've been in those situations before, and like your whole body knows, because you've been like collecting those data points and making those connections.
You're right. Your body does know. It's a lived experience. You've spoken to probably now tens of thousands of people over the course of your career. They've also shared their insights and inputs. You've looked at probably tens of thousands of data sets, and you've gleaned things. So it's a learned collective growth. It's not just, babies have no gut or intuition. So that's because they haven't had 30, 40, 50 years of experience working. Gut and intuition is a combination of being resourceful, remembering what you've already achieved, what you've already created, and then making sure you know how to leverage the resources around you. Don't ignore the data, because it is the most powerful thing you have. Don't ignore your colleagues. Those are incredible resources. If you're trying to sell to a new market, leverage your network. Talk to someone who has probably far more information than you. So gut and intuition, I think, is also a combination of being resourceful and tapping into your lived experience.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a mystery, right? It can be like very specific, like to your point, combination of how you do things and what you leverage and the decisions that you make.
Exactly.
So you attend major conferences like the Viva Tech and London Tech Week, and and you've actually summarized some of the key takeaways from those major conferences. So what I wanted to ask you is, cutting through all the hype, what are the most profound, most human-centric changes that you believe Gen AI will bring to our daily work and life in the next 5 years? And not just based on the conferences, right?
So there's many applications, like you said, Val. I think where I like to be a dreamer still is I think Gen AI is going to revolutionize industries that I know nothing about, like agriculture, construction, where there's going to be a lot more optimization and efficiency, and we can solve things like famines or lack of food and severe housing shortages. I hope that's where AI is going to. I've got to trust in the technology. It will get us there. In my world that I know more about is in the media space. So in content creation, the access, the ability to create content now is just as easy as anyone who has a pen, like who can write notes. So if that is the power, we've got to now move into the next phase, ideally where there's more intention around why are we creating when it's so easy to do. Just like the iPhone allowed everyone to become a photographer, it doesn't mean that these beautiful photography exhibitions aren't coveted and people explore them. There is going to be a very different shift in the creation and consumption of this content. And that's a very powerful technology, but we also have to remember the risks. So if everyone can create and there's just a proliferation of deep fakes, how do we combat that with other technologies? So I think a whole nother industry is going to spawn by verification, identification, the veracity, what is real versus fake. We don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but just in the same way that I think Reddit's front page is kind of a good example of there's so much content on Reddit, and yet somehow with enough upvotes, really good content floats to the top. And that's more of an explicit signal versus some of the black box algorithms that platforms also create. So we've got to also trust in these bigger platforms that their algorithms are going to still serve us the right content at the right time that is not nefarious, that actually is great for entertainment or education. So I can't say for certainty if it's like a good or bad verdict in how AI is disrupting media or content creation. It's complicated. There's so many ways in which AI can absolutely, we can harness it for good, democratize access, but there's also some really scary applications of it. So I'm hoping that everyone who's in this space working on AI, going back to values, we all know why we're doing this is to create and have a better impact through our content creation, whether it's through our words, our photos, our videos, our audio, whatever it is, that we're still doing this. We're still creating content. By that, I mean, we're still creating because we want to help humanity. And that's still very broad, but it's got to be very mission oriented. So AI is not going to make or break that. It still comes down to our core human values.
It's the people who are going to make or break that.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Stacie. This is a fascinating conversation. I'm super grateful to be able to connect with you and, you know, to ask you all these questions about your career, about your purview in this industry, in this space. I'm very, very grateful for our conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Val. You asked such tough questions that really made me think, and I think we had a really great conversation. Would love to do it again sometime.